All right, the first transformation we're going to talk about is called amplitudes of sine and cosine function. So let me read some information from the textbook. So at the top, notice that the constant factor a and y equal a sine of x and y equal a of cosine of x expands the graphs of y equals sine x and y equals cosine vertically if the absolute value of a is greater than 1, and compresses them vertically if the absolute value of a is less than 1. Now, let me go into details about that. Now, expand vertically or vertically expand is when the absolute value of a, so a can be positive and negative, but when we're talking about just the value of it, the absolute value, if the value is more than 1, meaning that it could be a decimal. So for example, 1.5, 2.2. So if originally, if your a was, for example, negative 3.2, it's still what you call vertically expand, because we would take the absolute value of negative 3.2, which is the absolute value of it is just simply 3.2, which is more than 1. Now, that was just a decimal example. It could be the same thing with fractions. So, for example, if you have 7 over 2, or in this case, if it was originally negative 7 over 2, and as I've done before, you convert into a decimal, which is 3.5. So if a was originally negative 7 point, if negative 7 over 2, if that was your fraction for a, and you were to take the absolute value of it, which is just 7 over 2, it's more than 1, so it's a vertical expansion or vertical stretch. Now, it would be a vertical compress if the absolute value of a is less than 1. So that means that not negative, because when we're taking the absolute value of a number, if we're just talking about the positive number. So for example, if it's less than 1, such as 0.3, such as 0.9, such as 0.8, that's less than 1, so it's going to vertically compress. So that's an example of decimals. What about fractions? Another fraction would be like 1/2, 2/3, 7/8. So you see those common pattern in those fractions. If it's a less than a whole number, then you can see once we take the absolute value of these fractions, you can say that they vertically compress. Now, expansion or stretch with compression or dilation. So in here, we're going to only talk about vertical dilation. Now, they tie into the amplitudes of sine and cosine. So let's go down here, talk about the definition of amplitudes. The amplitude of a sinusoidal function is half the distance between the maximum and the minimum values of the function, or half the height of the wave. So what you do is to simply find the distance between the maximum and the minimum, and then use half of it for the amplitude, or basically half of the height from the top and bottom of the sinusoidal graph, meaning the top and bottom of the sine or top and bottom of the cosine function. Now the symbol for amplitude is for y equals a sine of bx plus c plus d, and y equals a cosine of bx plus c plus d, amplitude equals the absolute value of a. So if a is originally negative or positive, all my asking is to find amplitude, you just do the absolute value of it. Keep in mind that if it's a fraction, it might help you convert into a decimal to give you a better, clearer image on what that number is. So all you have to do is if you were to find amplitude, just do the absolute value of a, which is always a coefficient in front of sine and cosine.